Okay, very good. So we'll start. So what we are going to talk tonight about is we are making a virtual trip to the Sorrento region. Now, what I have tried to do in this presentation, I've tried to use stamps, and there are quite a few Italian stamps in particular of the tourist issues that I could use to present some of the towns in the area around Sorrento. For a couple of cases, I've used the pictures because there was no stamp for that particular locality, and I thought it was important to add it to your presentation. Otherwise, the tour would be a little bit truncated in a way or another, okay? Mm. We are having a tour of 1 week, so be prepared. We are leaving from Toronto on the first day and or the pre-first day, and then we are coming back on the 8th day. The region which we are going to cover is the one which is in the picture that you are seeing. So we will be based in Sorrento, which is right here. We will start with a little stop here, which is my hometown, just near Sorrento. And then from Sorrento, we will travel to different locations every day. Okay? And then on the day 8, we'll come back home. Okay, so we are ready to leave. The idea about this trip has been connected to the fact that I've been talking to many of you, and some of you were complaining about the fact that unfortunately one of the biggest handicap of this pandemic is the fact that you cannot travel, you cannot go anywhere, you are somehow locked in your town, your city. So I thought this would be a good diversion or something different to do, and giving you the illusion that we are going traveling somewhere, okay? So what is your dream? Your dream is to call a taxi, and here are a few stamps of taxis. Go to the airport and catch a plane, and here are the planes. And then fly to an exotic destination, a European city, or who knows, something else. But there is a problem, an obstacle, and that's the COVID-19. And because of that, unfortunately, you're stuck at home. So let's make a virtual tour, and let's go to Sorrento. This is a stamp issued about 40 years ago now in Italy for to celebrate Sorrento as a tourist destination. Sorrento is right here. This is a villa in Sorrento. In the background, you see this mountain, and that's where the town of Meta is, and that's where I come from. So this is my hometown, and that's where we start our trip. You will see at the bottom a letter mailed from the town of Meta. It's using a numeral canso, which is a canso which has been popular in Italy for about 20 years. And in itself, it's an incredible, beautiful collection. But this means that you need to collect at least 3,000, 4,000 covers. So it's not an easy one. The town of Meta, it's a town that you see all of a sudden because you drive from Naples, you cross an area where there are very narrow coastal roads, and you only see the mountain around you. And then all of a sudden you arrive on the tip of the mountain, this mountain here, and all of a sudden you see the whole coast of Sorrento starting from Meta. And my town is right there. So as you see, basically nobody lives at sea level. The town is about 100 meters high, most of the town, but it develops also on the back on the mountains. So the highest area reaches about 600 meters. So it's diversified also in terms of climate, even if the whole area is very small because it's only a couple of square kilometers. There are beaches here. And in the old times, there was a very powerful marina. It's very difficult to understand now how in such a small area there could be so many different shipyards, but in the most famous period of the history of Meta, there were up to 8 shipyards there, and they were building tens of ships, one after the other. The tradition of the town is basically agricultural and of seamen. Say that about, at times, about 1/3 of the population was involved with agriculture and another third with sailing and working on ships. We have still today in town, with a population of about 8,000 people, we have a couple of hundreds of people who are captains of ships, or that they are in the career of becoming captains of ships. And basically the tradition was that the firstborn normally would be a farmer, and some of the other sons, they would go working on ships and would leave for very far destinations. To give you an idea, the part of the crew of the Electra ship, the one that Marconi used for his experiments, was from Meta. And also the crew of the ships that brought the King of Naples to Spain when he became King of Spain, Charles III, when he moved from Naples to Spain, the crew of the ship was in part from Meta. And the same when the daughter of the King of Naples went to marry the King of Brazil, they were also from Meta. So a tradition of seamen, which is also reflected in the painting that you see in the church of the main basilica of the town, which is full of ex voto. Ex voto are basically reparatory paintings offered by sailors who survived an accident, or honoring some of their friends who died in an accident at sea. And basically, there are hundreds of them in the Basilica in Meta. Meta has been part of the municipality of Sorrento for quite some time, and became separated again as an independent municipality in around 1945. So some people call it, and that's what I have shown here, Meta di Sorrento, because in reality, it's part of Sorrento, and it's only 4 kilometers from Sorrento. Sorrento is down here, and between here and there, most of the locals, they just walk back and forth because it's only 4 kilometers distance. Okay, so this is Meta. Unfortunately, nobody has issued a stamp for Meta until now. Hopefully, one day they will wake up and they will do it, because it's a beautiful town. Just to give you an idea, my family has been living in this town for over 300 years. We find records back to the late 1600s. Unfortunately, before that time, there are no records available, so we don't know anything more. But definitely my roots are there. Let's go to Sorrento. Let's start in Sorrento with the same stamp we've seen before. It's a beautiful stamp because it really gives a picture of the old coastline between Sorrento and Meta. There are 4 municipalities here in this area. They are all now heavily involved with tourism. Tourism is definitely the major source. But still in the whole area, not only in Meta, but also in the other municipalities and Sorrento, a lot of people still work at sea. Before they were working in cargo ships or in the old passenger ships. Now, a lot of them work on cruise ships. And one of the most important cruise companies, MSC, is based in Piano di Sorrento, which is halfway between Meta and Sorrento. The town is also known for its agriculture, particularly for the production of oranges, of lemons, walnuts, and a lot of different workshops, particularly specialized in woodworking. There are some remnants of the Roman times, because the town was already known as all the area here was populated by the Greek already. So has an history of at least 2,000, if not 3,000 years. Sorrento, the origin of the name is Sorrentum, or town of the sirens, because the old belief was that in this area, somewhere along the coast, the sirens were living, and they would be singing all the time, they were treated as goddesses, and some temples were also erected in their name. So one of the places which is known for a Roman presence already is the one which I'm showing here at the bottom, which is a place called the Bagni della Regina Giovanna. There was a Roman villa here. The picture shows the location. The villa is somewhere up here. And that's one of the few remains of the Roman presence that we can still find in Sorrento. Majority of them, unfortunately, are under the existing city, because the city was already had already very high population in the Middle Ages. So unfortunately, that means that a lot of things have been built on top of the old city. From Sorrento, it's very easy to go traveling to all the areas in the vicinity, the ones that I showed you on the map. Basically, in 1 hour or 2 hours travel, you can go anywhere you want in the area. So we will start with Ravello. Ravello is a small town now with about 2,000 inhabitants, which is on the top of the mountains between the Gulf of Naples and the Gulf of Salerno. It's got a beautiful view. It's a very romantic place, and people for centuries and centuries, they've come here for inspiration, for getting inspired, for writing music, for writing novels, or for painting. Ravello paintings made by Turner are now in the Tate Gallery in London. The famous Parsifal was, at least the setup of the Parsifal was conceived by Wagner here. And Lady Chatterley's Lover was written here too. So this, just to give you an idea, a music festival in Ravello is held every year and is very famous. There is a beautiful auditorium, which is a little bit of too big compared to the size of the town. The view is spectacular. There is the view we're looking at is for one of the two villas in Ravello, which date to the 1200s. So they are villas which are almost 1,000 years old, and they look at a spectacular view. That's the view of Amalfi Coast, and if you go on the other side of the town, you can see then all the Sorrento coast and the Naples Gulf. So Ravello is really a must to go. The stamp, I was not very happy about the stamp. I thought that they could have chosen a different type of image for Ravello. I think it doesn't really give a tribute to the beauty of Ravello. So day one, we come back to Sorrento. We rest there because the second day, it's really a tough one. You need good shoes, good comfortable shoes, because you're going to walk a lot. We are going to visit Pompeii, Herculaneum, all the area of the famous eruption of 69 after Christ. To go to Pompeii from Sorrento is not a problem. You go by train. It takes about 30 minutes or so. It's not really far. So you can really be based in Sorrento and then go to Pompeii. And Pompeii, it's a very, very interesting place. Unfortunately, most of the tourists, they go there and they spend half a day. And that's what I planned to do in this tour we're making now. But in reality, visit Pompeii, and you can see from this map the size of the town. It's huge, and this is only a part of the town which has been uncovered, because there is also another section which is still to be uncovered. Think that at the peak, Pompeii had a population of 20,000 people, so it was a big town. So, of course, if you want to walk back and forth and visit houses and different places along your travel, this is going to take at least one full day. Then there is up here a villa that I will show you separately, which is called Villa of the Mysteries, which unfortunately most of the tourists who go there only for half a day don't see, but instead, which is really a beauty. So here is Pompeii, very close to the volcano. So you see the Vesuvius here, and you see Pompeii in the way that basically has been left under the eruption, because all this area here was covered by ashes and by stones, other material which had been thrown by the Vesuvius. Some of the monuments were sticking out of the stones of the ashes. So unfortunately, people in the old times, we are talking year 100, year 200 after Christ, they were going there and they were picking marbles and other stuff from Pompeii. So unfortunately, Pompeii initially was quite a few things were pilfered in Pompeii at that time. Then there were subsequent eruptions. Vesuvius has erupted about 40 times in the last 2,000 years. So the area was abandoned, and then luckily for us, was not disturbed too much until about 200 years ago, that then a serious excavation started, and then they started to uncover part of the old city. So here are some other pictures of Pompeii. Just to give you an idea, for example, you have here the amphitheater, which is in very good conditions, considering what has happened in that area during the centuries, because there have been eruptions of the Vesuvius, but there have also been earthquakes. Actually, earthquakes were more common than eruptions. Eruptions, some of them were caused by, or were basically an assembly of ashes and stones which were thrown over the town. So they caused damage, but not so much damage. But in other cases where...
Hello?
Yeah. Hello, you can hear me?
Here, sit down.
Okay, so basically, in some cases, lava was coming down, and the lava was then destroying everything in its path, and also making it impossible to do anything because of the distance of the terrain after that.
Why can't we hear him?
Klaus, I'm having
yeah, I know. What this is, I can't, because I'm sharing the screen, or you're sharing the screen. I can't mute everybody. Oh, just a second. Maybe, yes, I can. So
Okay.
unmute everybody, including you. Just wait a second. And then you can unmute.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Good.
I'm back here.
Good.
So to give you an idea, the eruption in Pompeii that we're talking about, the one that caused the ruins that we see now, lasted 2 days. The first day, basically what came out of the volcano were ashes and pumice stones, and that caused damage to the city, but did not kill really a lot of people. People got a warning by that, and they started running away. Pompeii at that time was near the sea. Now it's the city of Pompeii is about 1 kilometer away from the sea, but then the port was really in the at the border of the town, near the walls. So the Pompeians, they rushed to the sea to run away, and of course, the rich and famous, they managed to get on the boats right away. The other people couldn't. And some of them, they were waiting for some sort of transportation for the second day. And unfortunately, the second day, the conditions changed completely. Instead of ashes and instead of stones, which could cause damage to people but not kill them, this pyroclastic gases started forming and literally flying down over Pompeii. I've read somewhere that they could reach 200 kilometers, 300 kilometers per hour. And they would, this masses of gas and stones, they would be very hot, 250, 300 degrees. Basically, wherever they would land, they would burn everything and kill everybody. So unfortunately, the second day, a lot of people died in Pompeii. So here we are still in Pompeii. Here on the top, you see a typical shop in Pompeii. Very interesting because you could find paintings describing what the people were doing at the time, and also frescoes, and you can find containers where they were holding material in the shop. So in those containers, they found food, they found other things, which are given also a lot of information about what the people of Pompeii used to eat, buy, and so on. At the bottom here, there is a sample of the bodies that they were found in Pompeii. These are basically near the gates of the sea, the gates which were on the seaside of Pompeii. So people that they were running away from Pompeii, and unfortunately they had nowhere to go. These are not actual bodies. What happened in Pompeii was that the archaeologists, they found areas where they were digging. All of a sudden, they heard a sort of hollow sound, like they were hitting an area which was empty. So after the first experiment, where they found out basically that was an empty space which once was occupied by body, and only a few bones were left, then they realized that when they were finding those spaces, they should inject some plaster or something in there to fill the whole area. And that's what they did. And basically that's what happened then, that this is the result of filling that empty space, and you find the body of the person in the position it was at the time of death. And here are a few bodies. Nowadays, the system is different. They use a sort of resin, which allows also the possibility to see the bones or to preserve the bones better.
Sorry, Mattia, I can't hear you.
Are you the only one? The others can hear me or not?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so Robert, then I'll continue. Okay, so the bodies today, they are they are rebuilt by filling with resin, which allows the possibility also to preserve better the bones. It's a different story in Herculaneum, and we will now move to Villa dei Misteri in Pompeii, but then we'll get to Herculaneum and explain to you something more. Here is Villa dei Misteri. No stamp has been issued in Italy to celebrate the paintings which are in Villa dei Misteri, which is a villa which is outside of Pompeii, and that's where it's missed by most of the tourists who go to Pompeii nowadays. It's a villa which, because of the way that it's been hit by the materials coming from the Vesuvius, has managed to preserve or to maintain a lot of the paintings which were, or the frescoes which were on the walls. There have been a lot of issues to preserve them because they were deteriorating very rapidly. But anyway, they managed to preserve them. And this room, it's called, the villa is called Villa of the Mysteries, because basically all these paintings here depict a day of a girl, of a young girl, that it's not very clear if she is getting married or if she has been initiated to a rite of Bacchus god or whatever. But anyway, there are some mysterious things happening during the day, and that's why it's called the Villa of the Mysteries. If you ever get the chance to go to Pompeii, I recommend you to visit the Villa dei Misteri, because it's really a unique place. Then we go to Herculaneum. Unfortunately, in this program, I planned to visit Pompeii and Herculaneum the same day, but you know, we can do that because we don't have the same restriction of an actual traveler. So here is Herculaneum, which is another town which has been covered by the material thrown by the Vesuvius at the same time. But the story of Herculaneum, the history of Herculaneum is different. First of all, Herculaneum was basically spared by the Vesuvius in the first day of the eruption. So the same issues that people had in Herculaneum, in Pompeii, they did not have it in Herculaneum. And actually, because of that, for a long time, people believed that nobody died in Herculaneum. Unfortunately, recently, this has been proved wrong. The people in Herculaneum probably were too complacent. They remained in the city, or maybe they did not have means to move away, because the only way to move away was by sea. And so they were trapped in Herculaneum. And up to today, they have recovered 300 bodies in Herculaneum, while instead in Pompeii, they recovered about 1,000 bodies. Of these bodies, they don't have the same type of reconstruction that they have in Pompeii, because the way that the bodies were hit by the fire clouds, if you want, was so strong that basically everything was burned immediately. And the only thing which is left is bones. So they don't have the same type of reconstruction of bodies that you can see in Pompeii. But still, unfortunately, quite a few people died, always in the area near the sea, where everybody was trying to go to escape the fury of Vesuvius. Herculaneum is very difficult to dig in, because basically the new city was built on top of the old city. Luckily, some people decided to build some villas, or even there were some excavations for the King of Naples to build a villa for him. And when they started digging, they found something underneath. And that's where they started digging more. And basically what you have now is this area here, which is in the middle. You see the new city up here? This is the new Herculaneum. And then you arrive in this area, and there is a sort of a hole. Here you don't notice that much, but basically this area is like a big hole or a big well that you go and look in the hole, and you see the Roman town underneath. And this is how you see Herculaneum. And all around here, there are other houses. So if you want to expand the research, you need to throw down all the houses of the new town. And that's expensive, very difficult to do. So only probably about 20% of Herculaneum is uncovered today. There are some interesting villas, some terme, which have been discovered, but unfortunately most of it is still underground and will probably remain underground forever. We go to the Vesuvius on day 3, but I should mention that there are other two less known towns that date also back to the same eruption, which are Oplonti and Stabia. And most of the people, they miss them completely, but they are actually quite interesting because they are more modern excavations, and there are quite a few nice things to see there too. Most of the paintings of the frescoes that and some of the statues, etc., that have been found in Pompeii, in Herculaneum, in Stabia, and in Oplonti, they have been brought to different museums, including the museum in Naples that I will mention later on. But here is the Vesuvius. Here, this the big beast that caused all this problem and has been causing the problem for such a long time. This is the cone of the Vesuvius as it is today, and this is what is called Monte Somma, which is actually a piece of a much larger volcano, and probably much higher than the existing volcano, which then collapsed in one of the eruptions of the Vesuvius. Reconstructions of old drawings or paintings of 2,000 years ago show only one volcano, while instead here basically there is the tip of the existing Vesuvius and part of the Monte Somma, which is the older volcano, which now are only present in part around the newer volcano, the Vesuvius. The Vesuvius has been very common in stamps. I put here some Italian stamps. This one has been issued for the Mediterranean Games, and this is more a shape of the Vesuvius in the background. There has been one for the soccer, for the only time that Naples, the Naples team won the soccer championship in Italy. And this is one of the stamps of the tourist issues, which have been issued for quite a few years in Italy. But there have been stamps issued about the Vesuvius also in other countries. And definitely it's a mountain which is really worth seeing. In the old times, there was a train going all the way up to the Vesuvius. But unfortunately, with the latest eruption of 1944, there were also economical reasons. The train, which was a cable train system, has been discontinued. But in the old times, you could go up to the Vesuvius and you could send a postcard from the Vesuvius station. Here you see a square circle cancel of the Vesuvius. Okay, and here on the side, you see also a cursive stamp of the Vesuvius, also at the station, at the train station, on top of the Vesuvius. But this unfortunately dates back to 100 years ago. The Vesuvius is, as I said, has been erupting 40 times roughly in the last 2,000 years. The last time in 1944 was a relatively mild eruption, but big enough to destroy 100 American airplanes, which were based in the area. We're talking 1944, so we're still in World War II. And basically, the power of these gases coming from the Vesuvius, they burned down about 100 airplanes, which was definitely a big damage for the Americans at that time, a critical time of the war. what people don't know, and unfortunately here I took the license to present you this slide, even if there are no stamps which celebrate the Phlegrean fields. Vesuvius is only one of about 40, 50 volcanoes in the Campania ring, which is all around Naples. West of Naples, this is still part of Naples. This section here, Bagnoli, it's still a part of the municipality of Naples. You see all the circles here? These are all cones of volcanoes. Even this one, the small island here, this is the cone of a volcano. There is a huge caldera all around here, and the volcanoes, they continue in the sea. Actually, many of them are submerged. They've been erupting thousands and thousands of years ago, but the area is still very, very active. And actually, there are a few things that are still happening in the area, particularly the bradisism is a very common phenomenon in the whole area. Namely, the land goes up and down. And this happens also in the area of Pompeii and Herculaneum. To give you an idea, the area of Pompeii-Herculaneum now it's a few meters below the sea level because of different movements which happened in the centuries. But the year particularly was quite spectacular. There is a town here, Pozzuoli, where there is an old building. People thought was a temple, but now it looks like was more the cow market that has columns, and the columns has been standing up for 2,000 years, and those columns, they show on the surface of the columns, you see the barnacles remains, because at times part of that of those columns were underwater, and now they're out of the water. So that indicates how the land has been going up and down, and depending on the period, larger part of the column were underwater or not. The latest bradisism happened about 50 years ago, and the whole area of the wharf of the town of Pozzuoli, which is here, was basically lifted, and it made impossible for ships to dock anymore because everything had gone up 3, 4, 5 meters. In this area, there is an area which is called the Solfatara, which is boiling. And unfortunately, recently there has been an accident there. In this area here, somewhere around here, there was an observation station built about 100 years ago, which then collapsed, which shows how this area, which is called Solfatara, moves. There is a grotto, which is well known, which is called the Grotto of the Dog, because the grotto is full of gases, and the gases, they sit at the bottom of the grotto. So technically, if you enter there with a dog, the dog will die, but you will not die. So it's an interesting area. But the most interesting part is the fact that there is a town, BAIA, which was an old Roman town. And this Roman town now, it's half out of the water, half underwater. It's not in normal tourist circuits yet, because only about 30 or 40 years ago, they started organizing tours of the area. But now you can rent a boat and you can go and travel along the streets of the town. You can see them from the top in a clear day. You know, of course, you have to choose a day where there is no bad weather to see but you can see the old surface of the town, and you can see mosaics, you can see columns, even some statues which are underwater. Basically, because of the bradisism, half of the town ended up, this happened around year 500, so about 1,500 years ago, the old town ended up underwater and remained there forever. So this is the end of day 3. We are coming back to Sorrento, and then from Sorrento we are taking a boat It takes about half an hour by hydrofoil, or about an hour and a half, something like that, to get to Capri from Sorrento. It's very convenient. Capri is just opposite of Sorrento. It's a beautiful island, so beautiful that the Emperor Tiberius decided to use it as his base, and instead of living in Rome, he lived there. And to communicate with his people in Rome, he used couriers. So people by horse would go all the way to Rome. We're talking about around 200 kilometers. And also they planted on top of the peaks of the mountains, they built some towers, and they would be signaling by lights, sending signals, which then would go all the way up to Rome, or at least to an area where then was easier to send a courier up to Rome. So this is the island of Capri in all the stamp of now over 50 years ago. You see these rocks here, which are called the Faraglioni. This is one of the most beautiful part of Capri. The top of the island of Capri, there is a village which is called Capri, and then there is one at the bottom. So there are only two towns in the island. The island is very famous for artists, people from all over the world have been coming to Capri, and quite a few times they decided to stay there, like Tiberius. One of them was Axel Munthe, who was the doctor of the Queen of Sweden, and Axel Munthe left this Villa San Michele, which is a small museum, which is really very nice in Capri, Capri. But one of the most attractive things is the Blue Grotto. The Blue Grotto is a grotto which has been well known since the time of Tiberius. In fact, at the time of Emperor Tiberius, this was his personal bath. So he would come here to swim, and nobody else would be allowed to get into the grotto. Then in the Middle Ages, people forgot about it, but then has been rediscovered. The entrance to the grotto is very small. Actually, there is another entrance, but it's underwater. But the one over the water is only about 1 meter high. So people, they can enter only with a small boat like this one, lying down on the floor. And that's how you get in there. And when you get in there, the whole area is shining of blue and silver. If you put any object in the water, because of the refraction in the water, basically everything looks like of a silvery color. It's a beautiful thing. At the time of Tiberius, it was full of statues because Tiberius used it as his personal bath. Then those statues were removed. There is a project now which is calling about the possibility of rebuilding, reproduction of the statues and put them in the grotto to make it more attractive. From Capri, there are 3 islands in front of Naples, which are one next to the other. So from Capri, you can go by boat also to the island of Ischia. Ischia is an island which is also very old, like all the islands in this area were known 2,000 years ago. One of the most characteristic things is this castle here, which is about 2,000 years old initially, but then been fortified at different times. And the island, there are 6 municipalities, of which Forio is one of them, and that's the one which is shown in this stamp from the touristic set. The other one is Lacomeno, which is here, which has got this rock, which is a sort of a mushroom. That's why it's nicknamed the mushroom. And the mountain on the back is the Mount Epomeo. This is also a volcano. And this is a volcano which is still active with the fumarole. Sorry, I got, because of that, there are thermal baths all over the island, and there are areas where you can get special sands that have apparently some health capabilities or some healing capabilities. And because of that, at the moment, on a population of 60,000 people, it is so well known with the German public that there are about 5,000 German residents in the island. Just to give you an idea of a good friend of my father was living there, and he was running some thermal baths. He was a German gentleman, and he had been living there for generations. From Ischia, we go to Procida. Procida is the smaller of the three islands. Procida is not sitting on a volcano itself, but there are 4 volcanoes underwater all around the island of Procida. And also Procida was formed by volcanoes. The island is the less well known of the three. Only recently has been discovered for tourism, although still already at the Roman times, some powerful Roman people were living in Procida and were spending their summer there. This is the end of day number 5. From Florida, we go from Procida, we go back to Sorrento. And the day after, we go on the southern coast, on the Salerno coast, and we visit the town of Positano. Positano is here in this tourist set that you can see here on the left. There is a block of 4 stamps with the depiction of the old part of Positano, the one which is near the sea, and with the lemons here on the side. Lemons are very common all around the area. Oranges, lemons, and walnuts have been, and olives and wine have been basically the agricultural production in the area. Although the lemons were not native of the area because they've been imported, they're coming from the east, eventually through North Africa, and eventually they arrived in the southern Italy. But here they found the ideal environment, the ideal temperatures, and lemons became very famous. Now there is a liquor that you may have heard about, which is called limoncello, which is now quite famous, which used to be produced in the homes in the whole area of Sorrento and Positano in the old times, which is made with alcohol and lemon, basically. The town of Positano is really spectacular. It's all built on the rock, and one house on top of the other, basically, or next to the other, but on a higher level. And then the agricultural area is all the way up, going towards Ravello, where there are these terraces, very small terraces, which are sometimes only 2 or 3 meters wide, which people have built with time, and where they grow fruits, they grow vegetables, and they grow vines, etc. It's a very expensive agriculture because basically you cannot mechanize, but the terrain, it's all volcanic, consequently very fertile, and with giving, at least for our locals, it gives a particular taste to the produce that are grown in the area. Positano now is very well known also for, has got a lot of fashion shops. The fashion industry is quite present there, and is now extremely well known for tourism, and it is probably one of the most expensive town to visit in the area. But it's really worth it, at least to spend half a day in Positano. Positano, in the municipality of Positano, there are also 3 islands, which are, you can see them here in the back. They are called the Galli, and they are three beautiful islands which have been most of the time privately owned. One of them was owned by a Russian musician, then eventually Nureyev bought it and spent his time there for many, many years. Then eventually they've been bought back by the government, and now there are projects or programs to make them available or visible to the public in the future. Continuing on the coast, we get to Amalfi. Amalfi is all centered around this church, the Church of St. Andrew. And you see a stamp here, which was issued in 1946, which shows the church and shows in the background the mountains and the towers I was talking to you about, which are present all over the area, on top of the peaks of the mountains. The town of Amalfi was very well known in the Middle Ages because it was one of the 4 sea republics of Italy, particularly famous in the time between the year 800 and the year 1000, 1100. Then eventually was defeated by the Republic of Pisa, and eventually Amalfi lost his wealth and his luster and became a little bit less important, if you want. But during the time of the Sea Republic, Amalfi was really thriving with commerce, with trade, was dealing basically with all countries in the Mediterranean. And one of the things which are really incredible is that in Amalfi they decided to write what are called the Amalfitan tables. So they wrote a code of navigation which has been used for hundreds of years for all people navigating in the Mediterranean. In those tables they describe all the rules that you have to follow in case that your ship breaks down, your ship sinks, the goods are lost, reparation to the people on the ship, reparation to the people who put goods on the ship, how the different people have to work on the ship and how they have to be treated and so on. It's really a very comprehensive legal document, which has been used all over the Mediterranean until basically the 1600s. Also, Flavio Gioia is considered the inventor, but more than inventor, probably the person who developed the compass, because the compass is coming probably from the Far East, but then was developed and was improved by Flavio Gioia, who was also from Amalfi. One of the most interesting things to see in Amalfi is the Regata Marinara, which is done every year, but in one of the 4 sea republics. So every 4 years it's done in Amalfi in the month of June, where historical boats of the sea republics, they compete against each other. The 4 sea republics were Genova, Venice, Amalfi, and Pisa. From Amalfi, we go back to Sorrento, and then the day 7 we dedicate to visit the city of Naples. So here we see some stamps of Naples. We show one, this is the panorama of Naples. So this is all the coastline of Naples. And then, as you see in the background, there is, of course, the Vesuvius. This building here is the Royal Palace. The Bourbon kings were kings of Naples for around 200 years. And this is the Royal Palace where they were living in. The Royal Palace looks on a square, which is Plebiscite Square, which has got a church opposite to the Royal Palace. And this is also a stamp which has been issued more recently, celebrating or showing the side of the square. While instead, a little bit further down towards the sea, there is a castle which is called Maschio Angioino, which dates back to the Anjou kings. So we're talking about early Middle Ages. And this is a picture of the Maschio Angioino. As you see, it's very close to the sea. Was one of the fortresses defending Naples. Now it's partially a museum. Partially there are different institutions and charities in there. It's a beautiful building, which is part of the group of castles that there are in Naples, because there is one castle that you can see here in the stamp, which is called Castel dell'Ovo, which is also basically on the sea. And then there is another one on top of the mountain, which is where there is a museum now, San Martino, which was also a fortress and was used during the different wars that Naples went through in the centuries. Naples was not the original town. The original town was Partenope, which is the name of a siren. And then the humans who were the people who were at the power on Naples we're talking Greek times, they decided that they did not like what the people in Partenope was doing. There was opposition to their government, and they created what was called in Greek the new town, Neapolis, which means the new city. And that was Naples, which was only 3 or 4 kilometers away from Partenope. And that's basically what Napoli is now. One of the beauty of Naples is the museums. There are many museums. One of them is the archaeological museums of Naples. This one is a museum which is a must to visit, because basically most of the mosaics of the paintings coming from Pompeii, Herculaneum, Stabia are here. So it is worth to spend a full day in the museum. In Naples, there are 40, 50 museums to visit, but this is probably the one which is a must. Unfortunately, there has been no stamp issued by Italy for this museum. The only one I could find was one from Mali, which shows a particular of this reproduction of a battle of the King Alexander. And this has been partially preserved. As you see, a large area is missing, but still it's really beautiful, one of the most beautiful pieces which are in the Archaeological Museum in Naples. Other museums are on the top of the hill. You remember I spoke about one of the fortresses which were on top of the hill. This is what was called Forte Sant'Elmo. And here there was also a monastery. So the fortress, the monastery, the whole area on top of the hill has been then transformed in a museum. And this is the National Museum. There has been a stamp dedicated to the National Museum, which reproduces one of the paintings which are in the museum, which shows the Naples as it was in the 1500 or so, and quite different from the Naples of today. Not so crowded, not such a large city, but with the Maschio Angioino that basically was sitting in the water, in the sea. Now the fortress is a little bit farther away from the sea. The other museum that it's worth visiting is Museo di Capodimonte, which is also on top of the mountains, because Naples is sitting in a bay and part of the city is at sea level, but another part is on the mountains, on the hills behind Naples. Capodimonte was one of the royal palaces of the kings of Naples. And it's a very interesting museum, particularly if you're interested in ceramics and paintings. Another one which has received the honor of a stamp, Italian stamp, is Villa Pignatelli, which is a villa which is, has been a private villa for a long time, has been transformed in a museum after it was donated by the last owners of the villa to the Italian government. And one of the most spectacular areas in the villa is this huge area full of old carriages, which are really a beauty to see. But one of the beauties of Naples is the San Carlo Theater. Here is a stamp of the San Carlo Theater from 1987, which shows an old print showing the museum as it was in the old times. The San Carlo Museum is the oldest museum in the world. It has been built before the La Scala and has been one of the most famous museums for a very long time, attracting composers, attracting people from all over the world. In the early 1800s was partially destroyed by fire, and at least the external part of the theater was rebuilt then, and maintained during the Bourbon time. Was a theater which was not as big as others, but was really considered the cradle of music in Italy until the unification of Italy. Then basically in 1860, when the Kingdom of Naples lost its independence and became part of Italy, all the efforts were concentrated in developing La Scala, and the San Carlo lost a lot of his importance and became the second theater in Italy after La Scala. And this caused also financial problems, also because the Bourbon kings were helping the theater substantially. But some musicians, in particular Puccini, really supported the theater, which after being closed for 1 year reopened, and him and other musicians made a big effort to relaunch the theater. And the theater since then has reacquired most of its glory, has gone under large renovations about 10, 20 years ago, also to readapt certain things, like, for example, the electrical system and other things, which were definitely extremely old in the theater. And the theater of San Carlo is really a must to be seen. It's really a beautiful theater to be visited. If you can go and listen to an opera there, even better. But just the visit of the theater and the small museum that there is inside the theater is really worth the visit. With this, we have reached day number 8. So we are ready to leave. We have visited all the area around Sorrento. All people who live Sorrento, they leave Sorrento with a little bit of nostalgia and the desire to go back. Actually, there are 2 famous songs which are known from Naples. One is O Sole Mio, My Son, but the other one is Torna a Sorrento, Come Back to Sorrento. And this is something that all people from Sorrento consider as
Mattia, you have to turn up the sound somehow.
That's the maximum.
There's no sound.
There is no sound?
No.
No sound.
So I cannot do anything about it. But anyway, basically, this is just the message, or the message that people from Sorrento bring when they leave the town. The message to come back and to go and visit Sorrento again. And I wish that you'll be able to come back in person to Sorrento later on. Maybe, who knows, together with me sometime. With this, we're going back to Toronto. The trip is finished. We're back to our regular life.
Mattia, thank you very, very much.